What happens when a CEO answers phones at his own vet clinic and realizes the company he built is breaking hearts to save dollars? Shane Carter sat in his truck outside the vet clinic, staring through the windshield like it was a one-way mirror. This was clinic number 12 of the 20 he owned across the Midwest. He had bought the struggling chain 7 years ago from an older couple who were retiring. Since then, he'd poured everything into modernizing the clinic's new equipment, upgraded software, better branding. It had worked. Business was booming. But lately, something wasn't sitting right. The last few months, he'd seen too many online reviews from desperate pet owners saying they were turned away for not being able to pay up front. One woman claimed she begged staff to help her dying dog and was told to come back with a credit card. Shane had asked for explanations, but the district manager's answers were always polished and vague. Clinic 12 was in a mid-sized town in Indiana. Staff turnover was high. He'd never met the team here in person, and since it was a corporate-owned location, nobody would recognize him anyway. He wore a brown beard, thick-rimmed glasses, and a faded hoodie. The name tag on his scrubs read Sean. He walked in like a new trainee. The clinic manager, a woman in her early 40s named Tessa, greeted him with clipped words. "You're the new guy from corporate, right? They said you're shadowing front desk today." "Yeah. Just here to learn the ropes," he said, voice low. She handed him a headset and pointed to the front desk. "Phones. Intake. Don't overthink it. Just follow the script." It was a busy Thursday. Calls came in back-to-back appointments, medication refills, general questions. Shane did his best to keep up, watching how the others handled things. A young tech named Renee was kind, gentle with clients, and seemed to do twice the work of everyone else. Another receptionist, Will, seemed bored out of his mind and let the phone ring longer than needed. 2 hours in, a call buzzed through. Shane tapped the green button. "Thank you for calling. How can I help?" A woman's voice came through, tight with panic. "Hi, please, I need help. My cat's not breathing right. She's old, she has heart issues. I don't have an appointment, but I can be there in 10 minutes. Please." Shane looked at the schedule. A slot was open in 15. "Okay, ma'am, I see we have." Before he could finish, Tessa leaned over, pressed mute on his headset, and snapped, "No payment method on file, no walk-ins. Ask if she has care credit." Shane blinked. "You serious?" "Ask," she said, then walked off. He unmuted. "Ma'am, do you have care credit or a payment method you could use today?" There was a pause. "No, I mean I get paid Friday. Can I pay then?" "I'll sign anything," she pleaded. "I am really sorry. Let me check again," Shane said, heart pounding. He stood up and walked to Tessa. "She's got a dying cat. We've got a slot. Why can't we just see her?" Tessa didn't even look up. "We're not a charity. If she can't pay, she can go to the shelter. They do low-income euthanasia." "She's not asking for euthanasia." "Well, maybe she should be." Shane froze. He stood there, headset still around his neck. The words echoed in his head. She actually said that. He walked back, slowly. The woman on the line was still there. "Ma'am," he said, voice quieter now. "I'm so sorry. We're unable to see pets without upfront payment. I wish I had better news." She didn't scream. She didn't curse. She just whispered, "Okay," and hung up. Shane took his headset off. He sat down, staring at the blinking screen of the phone system. Renee came over, soft-eyed. "You okay?" He nodded slowly. "Just surprised." She sighed. "That happens more than it should. I try to help when I can. But Tessa's strict. She says if we bend the rules once, we'll have to do it all the time." Shane looked around. The clinic was spotless. The computers were new. There were 3 unused exam rooms in the back. He felt sick. That woman's cat was probably dying in the front seat of her car right now. Because of a billing policy he didn't even know existed. He put his headset back on. He had more calls to take, and a lot more to learn. By mid-afternoon, Shane had stopped trying to make sense of the place and started watching instead. The phones never stopped. Neither did the quiet tension behind the counter. Every second felt like someone was about to crack. Renee had barely taken a breath since she walked in. When she wasn't prepping treatment rooms or gently guiding nervous pets to the back, she was juggling the front desk when Will disappeared again, this time to check the printer, which evidently lived in a black hole behind the supply room. Shane kept his eyes on movements. Patterns. Who stepped up? Who vanished? Who cared? He stepped into the break room during a lull. It was cramped, just a microwave, a coffee pot that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in weeks, and a couple of metal chairs. Renee was there alone, eating something cold out of a Tupperware. "You always this busy?" he asked, leaning against the doorway. She looked up, surprised. "Only when we're short." "Which is?" "Pretty much always." "Don't they rotate techs from other clinics?" She gave a small shake of her head. "Not here. Tessa says it's too expensive to cross-train. So we just double up hours." There was no bitterness in her voice. Just tired honesty. "Do you get overtime?" She laughed once, quietly. "I get told to clock out for lunch even when I don't take one." Shane felt his jaw tighten. "That legal?" She looked at him sideways. "Are you asking is Sean the trainee or Sean from corporate?" He didn't answer. She didn't push. The door creaked open behind them. Will walked in, holding a half-eaten bag of chips. "Hey, new guy," he said. "You get thrown on kennel cleaning yet?" "That's usually the hazing phase." Shane shook his head. "They've got me on phones." Will shrugged and dropped into one of the chairs. "Lucky. Phones are easy. Unless it's one of those sob stories." Renee stood up and tossed her container in the trash. "They're not stories, Will. They're people." Will didn't even look at her. "Yeah, well, stories don't pay the lease." Shane watched her walk out without a word. She moved like someone who'd learned silence cost less than talking. Back at the front, a man in coveralls walked in, holding a trembling dachshund wrapped in a towel. The dog was wheezing hard, eyes wide with fear. The man looked just as panicked. Shane stepped forward instinctively. "Sir, how long has he been breathing like that?" "Started an hour ago. He was fine this morning. Then he collapsed coming down the steps." Shane reached for the intake clipboard, but before he could move, Tessa emerged from the hallway. "Has he been seen here before?" she asked flatly. "Yes, ma'am. Twice. I think he's got a file." "Payment method?" The man blinked. What do you mean?" "We don't examine animals without a deposit. It's $200 for urgent care." He looked down at the dog, who let out a small yelp and coughed hard. "I don't have it on me. I didn't know where else to go." Shane stepped in. "We've got a room open." "I can help fill out his chart," and Tessa cut him off. "No. He needs to go to the emergency vet in Bloomington. We're not equipped for respiratory crises without a full team." Shane knew that was a lie. He'd personally ordered the oxygen masks for this location 6 months ago. The man looked between them. "He might die before I get there." Tessa folded her arms. "Then you should have planned better." Shane turned to her. "We're sending a dying dog away because the guy's short $200? She didn't blink. "We're not running a loss clinic. If you've got a problem with that, take it up with corporate." He stared at her. "Maybe I will." She walked off without another word. Shane turned back to the man. "Sir, I'm sorry. There's another vet about 15 minutes west. I know the lead tech there. I'll call ahead." He grabbed a sticky note, scribbled the name and number, and handed it over. The man nodded, barely able to speak. He carried the dog out as gently as he came in. Shane didn't sit down. He walked straight to the back hallway, where the storage closet doubled as a charting station. Renee was there, updating files. He lowered his voice. "That dog, the one with the breathing problem. We had the tools to help him, right?" She looked up slowly. "Yeah, we did. So why lie?" "Liability," she said. "That's what they say. But between you and me, it's about money. Tessa runs this place like it's a quota system." "What does that mean?" "I mean she gets bonuses if the clinic stays under a certain budget. Supplies, payroll, write-offs. Every free exam or discounted case cuts into that." Shane's stomach turned. "She ever get in trouble for it?" "No. She's tight with upper management. They like her numbers." He leaned against the wall, trying to slow his thoughts. "You ever think of quitting?" "Every week," she said. "But I got student loans. And I love the animals. I just hate what this place does to them." They stood in silence. Then Shane asked, "If you could change one thing here, what would it be?" She didn't hesitate. "Let us treat first. Ask questions later." He nodded slowly and walked back toward the front. The rest of the day moved fast. A golden retriever with a torn pad. A ferret chewing through its carrier. A woman trying to refill insulin for her diabetic terrier, only to be told she needed a new exam first despite the dog being stable for over a year. By closing time, Shane had seen enough. As the staff began wiping down counters and shutting off lights, he asked Tessa if he could speak to her in the office. She didn't look concerned, just annoyed to be delayed. Inside, the lights were dim. The desk was covered with invoices and printed metrics. Shane closed the door and pulled off his glasses. Tessa looked up. "What the hell are you doing?" "Let's talk," he said quietly. "My name's Shane Carter. I own this clinic." Her face drained of color. "You can't just show up pretending to be someone else. I can when I get reports of people being turned away while their pets are dying. And I wanted to hear it for myself." She stood quickly. "If you're upset about policy, you need to speak to corporate. I'm just following what I am corporate. I signed those policies. And they weren't meant to be used like this." She opened her mouth, but he raised a hand. "Let me be clear. Turning away emergencies without even trying to stabilize? Lying about equipment? Forcing staff to clock out when they're still working? That's not fair," she snapped. "We have to hit numbers. You know how tight margins are." "Not that tight," he said. "Not tight enough to justify what I saw today." She crossed her arms. "So what, you're firing me?" He didn't blink. "Effective immediately." She stared. "You can't run this place without me. I think it's been running despite you." She stormed out without another word. Shane sat down in her chair. The office smelled like stale coffee and paper. He picked up a clipboard and started listing names. Tomorrow he'd call the regional team. He'd need to bring in a temp manager, audit the last 6 months of records, and talk to every employee one by one. But first, he walked out to the front lobby where Renee was wiping down the reception desk. She looked up, confused. "I'm not Sean," he said. "I'm Shane. I own this place." She didn't speak, just stared. Frozen. "I saw everything today, and I'm sorry. You deserve better. The clients deserve better." She set the rag down slowly. "What happens now?" "Now," he said, "we make this place about care again." The next morning, Shane arrived early before the sun had fully cut through the low Indiana clouds. He parked in the back lot, out of sight. Inside, the clinic was quiet. The front door was still locked. He had the keys now. Tessa's were collected and overnight to regional. He let himself in through the employee entrance, turned on the front lights, and sat behind the reception desk. The phone system was already blinking. Voicemails overnight. Missed calls. One of them was from the woman with the cat. He didn't open it yet. By 7:30, Renee walked in. Her hoodie zipped up to her chin, hair damp from the rain. She froze when she saw him sitting behind the desk. "You're in early," she said. "I wanted to see what this place feels like before it gets loud." She nodded slowly, eyes wary. "Did you really fire her?" "Yes." She exhaled, then walked toward the back without another word. At 8, the rest of the staff filed in. Will showed up with a breakfast sandwich and earbuds in. He didn't notice Shane until he dropped into his usual seat behind the desk and looked over. He blinked. "You're still here." "I am." Will looked around, confused. "Where's Tessa?" "Gone." Will paused mid-bite. "Gone as in?" "Gone as in she no longer works for this company." Will leaned back, processing. "Okay, guess that's one way to shake things up." Shane didn't answer. "We'll be short a manager until the new lead arrives next week. Until then, I'll be coordinating operations here. You're filling in? Temporarily. Will looked uneasy, right? Well, I've got paperwork to finish. Actually, you and I need to talk. Now. Shane stood and motioned toward the break room. Will hesitated, then followed. Inside, Shane closed the door. You've been here over a year, correct? 14 months. Then you know the clinic's rhythm, the pressure, the customers. Will nodded. Yeah. You also know you've been coasting. Will blinked. Excuse me? You disappear during peak hours. You dump calls on other staff. You ignore walk-ins unless directly told otherwise. Will's posture stiffened. Look, I've done what I'm asked. I follow the scripts. I show up. I'm not here to be a hero. I'm not asking for heroism. I'm asking for effort. I'm not lazy. No, Shane said evenly, you're disengaged. You think showing up is enough. But here, it isn't. This isn't retail. People walk in with living things in their arms. Scared. Grieving. You treat it like a transaction. Will looked away. What do you want from me? I want you to treat this job like it matters. Because it does. And if you can't do that, I'll find someone who can. There was a long pause. Understood, Will said. Good. You're on intake today. No distractions. You miss one call, you explain why. Will left without another word. In the lobby, the first clients were arriving. An older man with a beagle limping slightly. A young couple with a new kitten in a carrier. Renee moved between them with practiced calm, checking charts, updating records. Shane stayed behind the desk, watching how the day unfolded. By mid-morning, a woman came in carrying a shivering terrier wrapped in a baby blanket. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. Renee approached gently. Hi there. What's going on today? He's been vomiting since last night. I thought it was something he ate, but now he won't stand. Has he been seen here before? Twice. His name's Booker. Renee looked at the screen. Can you hold on just a moment? She glanced at Shane, who nodded. Get him in room 1. I'll call Dr. Leem. The woman blinked. Wait, don't you need payment first? We'll stabilize first, Shane said. Then we'll talk about next steps. Her mouth trembled. Thank you. Shane watched her follow Renee down the hall, the little dog still wrapped tight. He followed a few minutes later and saw Renee administering fluids with the vet, Booker already showing signs of improvement. The woman sat in the corner, whispering softly to her dog. Back at the front, Will was taking calls with more focus than the day before. He still avoided eye contact, but he wasn't ducking out between calls. Progress. By noon, the waiting room was full. Shane stepped in where needed, inputting records, cleaning up after patients, even walking a husky outside when the kennel techs were overloaded. He didn't announce who he was to clients. He didn't need to. That wasn't the point. In the early afternoon, a delivery driver arrived with a stack of medical supplies. Shane signed off and checked the invoice. Several items were ordered a month ago: oxygen masks, wound care kits, emergency antitoxins, but had never been restocked properly. He flagged the tech lead, a quiet man named Evan. Did these get used already? Evan glanced at the list. Some of them, but the masks? No, those were never unpacked. Tessa had us put them in the back closet. Said they weren't necessary for day to day. Shane frowned. Show me. They walked to the storage room. In the corner, behind unopened cases of flea meds, sat 2 sealed boxes labeled Respiratory Emergency Support Adult/Small Animal. Shane cut them open. Inside were the exact kits that could have helped the dachshund from the day before. He closed the box slowly. From now on, these stay stocked in Exam 2, and every tech gets trained on them by Friday. Evan nodded. Understood. As the afternoon wore on, Shane pulled Renee aside between patients. Tomorrow, I want you off the front desk completely. You're our primary tech until reinforcements arrive. She hesitated. What about Will? He's on phones and admin. If he steps up, he stays. If not, he's gone. She didn't argue. Around 4, a man arrived in dusty work boots and a faded flannel, holding a box with air holes punched into it. Inside was a small rabbit, breathing shallowly. He walked up to Will. "I need someone to look at him. He stopped eating yesterday. I think he's got GI stasis." Will paused, clearly unsure. "Do you have an appointment?" "No. I called this morning. They told me to come if it got worse." Will scanned the screen. "Okay. Oh, we need a new patient form and a deposit." Shane stepped in. "We'll take him now." "Renee, room 3. Will stepped back, jaw tight. The man looked stunned. "You're really gonna see him?" "Yes. We'll do what we can." As Renee guided the man down the hall, Will turned to Shane. "You're just letting everyone walk in now?" "I'm letting critical animals be treated. That's the job. If we do that for everyone, we'll go under." "No. If we ignore them, we'll lose everything." Will opened his mouth, then closed it. He turned back to his screen. By closing time, the clinic looked different. Not quieter, not cleaner, but more awake. Staff were tired, but not indifferent. Patients were being seen. Owners didn't leave in tears. As Shane locked up, Renee came to the front holding a clipboard. "I know it's only been a day," she said, "but this feels better. It's just the start." She hesitated. "Can I ask something?" "Of course. You own 20 clinics. Why'd you come here?" "Because this one was breaking my heart." She nodded slowly. "Then I'm glad you did." By the following Monday, the shift in the clinic's atmosphere had settled into something more deliberate. Not smoother, there were still moments of chaos, but more grounded. People were showing up early, staying through lunch, listening harder to each other. Shane didn't announce his presence anymore. He didn't need to. Everyone knew who he was now and, more importantly, what he stood for. He had spent the weekend reviewing every employee file, every time card discrepancy, every supply order that had been manipulated or delayed. The findings were worse than he'd expected. Staff had been routinely clocked out mid-shift under the pretense of lunch by Tessa's admin access. Some hadn't been paid for up to 6 hours a week. That wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. By Tuesday afternoon, he was sitting across from Will again, this time in the office with the door closed and the air heavy. "Your hours are accurate," Shane said, looking over the spreadsheet. "But you've signed off on at least 15 adjustments to other people's time cards. Care to explain?" Will shifted in his seat. "Tessa told me to. Said it was standard if they missed clocking out. You're not in payroll. You're not a supervisor. And you knew they hadn't taken those lunches. I didn't think it was my place to question, it was absolutely your place. You watch people get cheated and did nothing." Will didn't respond. "You've had a week to show change. I gave you space to prove you were capable of more than just coasting through. But you've taken shortcuts every day since. I've been here longer than anyone else," Will said, his voice rising. "I've covered shifts, worked weekends, you've filled hours. Not roles. And you've done it with the door half closed." Shane stood. "You're being released immediately. Your final paycheck will be calculated correctly, including any owed time. HR will reach out this week." Will stood too slower. "So that's it. You were trusted. You chose convenience over integrity. That's it." Will left without asking for a reference. By the end of the day, Shane gathered the core team: Renee, Evan, and 2 part-time techs who'd stayed quiet through the worst of it. They met in the break room, chairs pulled into a loose circle. No one had phones out. No one was rushing to leave. "There's a lot we need to rebuild," Shane began. "And I'm not talking about walls or equipment. I'm talking about trust." Evan leaned forward. "Is this just for this clinic, or all of them?" "Every location. I've already sent auditors to 5 others." Renee glanced over. "You think they're all like this?" "Not all. But I let this one go too long without eyes on it. I won't make that mistake again." The younger tech, a college student named Harper, rubbed the back of her neck. "What happens if a client can't pay? I mean, really can't. Are we still allowed to help?" Shane nodded. "We're setting up a hardship fund. 5% of each clinic's monthly net will go into a reserve. It won't cover everything, but it'll give us room to act with compassion, not fear." Evan nodded. That would have saved a lot of heartbreak. It still can. Shane turned to Renee. You've been carrying this place on your shoulders for too long. That ends now. I want you to step into a lead tech role. Better pay, full benefits, and autonomy over patient flow. She blinked. Seriously. You've earned it. Every time you chose care over convenience, you earned it. She looked down, jaw tight. Then I'll do it. But I want to help train the next round of hires. Not just skill-wise. Ethically. Exactly what I hoped you'd say. He handed a folder to Evan. I need you to oversee equipment tracking. Keep our inventory honest. Evan opened it. I can do that. But we're still short on staff. I know. I've approved 2 new hires. 1 front desk, 1 tech apprentice. Renee will help with interviews. We'll build the team right, not fast. By Thursday, the new applicants began arriving. Shane stayed out of the interview room, letting Renee and Evan lead. They looked for warmth first, credentials second. The first was a man in his late 20s, polite but detached. Technical knowledge was strong, but when asked how he'd handle a panicked owner with no payment method, he shrugged and said, policy's policy. Renee thanked him and wrote a firm no. The next was a woman named Lila, early 30s, former animal shelter coordinator, soft-spoken but clear-eyed. When asked about difficult clients, she said, people act scared when they think they're powerless. I try to give them one thing they can control, even if it's small. They hired her on the spot. The apprentice, a high school graduate named Dorian, had no formal experience but showed up with a notebook of questions and a binder full of veterinary articles he'd annotated himself. Evan asked him how he'd clean a wound, and instead of bluffing, he said, I don't know yet, but I'll learn it right. They offered him part-time with mentorship under Renee. By Saturday, the team was operating with more rhythm. Not perfection, there were schedule gaps, supply hiccups, but the difference was visible. Clients weren't afraid to ask questions. Staff didn't whisper when something went wrong. Booker, the terrier from earlier in the week, returned for a follow-up, tail wagging. His owner brought donuts for the entire staff. Shane stood in the lobby that afternoon, watching Renee guide a nervous child through her kitten's first vaccine. The girl winced when the needle came out, but Renee made her laugh with a joke about kitty superpowers, and the tension broke like a bubble. Later, as they closed up, Shane walked outside with Evan. You think this is sustainable? Evan asked. With the right people in the right roles, yes. Evan nodded. Then I'm in. Long haul. Shane looked back at the building. The lights were off now. The sign out front still carried the old branding, corporate, sterile. I want a new name, he said. Something local. Something real. Evan looked over. You changing all the clinics? Each one will choose its own. From now on, they're not copies. They're communities. The next morning, Shane returned to his office in Chicago. He'd been gone 10 days. On his desk were reports, voicemails, follow-ups from other clinics. But he didn't sit right away. He looked at the old mission statement framed on the wall. It read, efficiency, growth, excellence. He took it down, set it aside. Then he opened a blank document. He wrote, compassion, accountability, care that reaches further than a price tag. That would hang in every lobby by the end of the quarter. Across the Midwest, 20 vet clinics were about to become something new, and this time, they'd be built from the inside out.